I'm Alan King, comedian, and tonight we go inside the comedy mind of Eric Bogosian. Actor, writer, master of the monologue. Your one-man shows, Men Inside, Funhouse, Drinking in America, Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll, I mean, have all been critically acclaimed. And your play and then film, talk radio. I want to welcome Eric Bogosian.
Thank you.
Can I read that you're referred to as a performance artist, which is...
Unfortunately, yes. Well, what happened with me is that I started out acting in high school and then in college. And when I showed up in New York, I didn't like the scene. I didn't like the acting scene. It didn't make sense to me. It seemed like I was going to spend more time in classes, more time getting headshots, more time with everything but acting. And I started hanging around with artists, and artists were doing this performance art stuff down in Soho.
You mean visual artists? You mean painters?
They were visual artists who had decided to just perform, and they would make the craziest performances, and it was great. In fact, it really opened me up to think, I can do anything on this stage. I don't have to follow any particular rules.
You were raised in the suburb of Boston,
Woburn.
Woburn.
The Indian goes, woo, burn,
Woburn,
when he touches the hot rock.
Is that the legend?
That's the legend of Woburn.
What is a nice Armenian family doing in the Woburn?
Well, and it was the 60s, and they were just mowing down the farms and building suburbs, and my family moved out there from Watertown, which is is where all the Armenians live around Boston. For me, it was a different culture, but I didn't know it was a different culture. People didn't talk like that in those days. Armenians like to argue and talk and read and have big family gatherings, lots of food. I found out later in my life that Jewish people like to do this too, but I didn't know
and
that.
Italian people.
Ethnics, what they call ethnics. Irish people or whoever I was growing up with, it was a different style of life, and certainly all the talking I used to do really stood out. And so I was different than a lot of the kids I was growing up with.
Did you find it tough growing up in that atmosphere, or just different?
Well, fighting was something that a lot of kids did. Fighting and drinking was big, and I wasn't that good at either one, or sports. And so I was the talker. I was the guy who would talk my way out of the fighting, or talk my way into the gang, or I could get through just about anything just with my mouth.
How old were you when you played in Romeo and Juliet, Capulet? How old? About?
Romeo and Juliet was the 10th grade.
In the 10th grade? Well, what, about 14, 15? How old?
Yeah, well, the teacher just said one day we're going to do theater. That was sort of the way my high school worked. It wasn't, we were sort of a pretty middle-class high school, and she said, we're doing theater today, or he said it, and Eric, you're going to play Juliet's father. And so, okay, fine, where's the book? I read it. And Juliet's father does a lot of yelling, because Juliet's always coming home late from her dates, and
right.
He's on her neck.
And she's going out with the wrong guy, too.
Yeah, right. And I would yell and yell and yell, and then and I just took to the thing like a fish to water. For the first time, I found something I could really do well. I had spent a lot of time in my bedroom alone when I was a little kid, sort of talking to the mirror, making faces, and fantasizing. It was my joy to fantasize. I lived in a sort of little dream world, kind of bop down the street by myself, making believe I'm like a little Walter Mitty was sort of what I was.
Were you a product of television? Did you watch television?
I watched tons of television.
Tons of it.
Tons of television. And I thought it was all real. I thought the monkeys were real, and I thought Mod Squad was real. And probably the most influential thing in my whole childhood was an ad they used to have on in the Monkeys. A guy was surfing. It was some kind of aftershave, and a voiceover would come on and say, "Some guys have it. Some guys never will." And I would just sit there going, I never will. I never will have it. And I just, and at any rate, I watched tons and tons and tons. I watched every show. I don't know how.
Were there particular influences in retrospect when you look back? Was there anybody that you said, oh, I'd like to be like him? from television? I mean, we're talking about
I wanted to be
heroes.
Martin Landau in Mission Impossible, for
Oh,
sure.
I see. It wasn't Milton Berle or Jerry Lewis. Yeah, I see. Martin Landau.
No, I wanted to be all the heavy guys. I wanted to be the guys in I Spy and all the detective, and or maybe Perry Mason was another favorite of mine. Dramatic. I was very dramatic. See, the thing with me with comedy is that I am very, very dramatic. But when I get in front of people and I try to be dramatic, they laugh. And this has been going on since I was little. And somehow I can keep switching back and forth into this scary stuff, but there's a part that, I mean, I'm not a funny guy. I'm not like the guy you invite to dinner and you say, oh, Eric, he's a riot. I mean, I'm going to sit there and bum everybody out. We're going to be eating dinner. I'm going to start talking about Somalia or something, and it's just, you lose your appetite.
We'll be right back with my special guest, Eric Bogosian.
What operation? I didn't have no operation, okay, Vincent? I had an exploratory. Exploratory is not an operation. Exploratory, they just open you up. They look around inside there, they close it again, they don't change nothing, all right? They said I was in perfect health. All I got is a little tiny benign tumor in there. No, benign. Benign. You're thinking about malignant tumors here, Vincent. It's two different things. It's two different things. No, it's not. Vincent, malignant tumors is very, very bad for you. You should never have malignant tumors. They're terrible. Benign tumors, you can have all the benign tumors you want, all right? They don't hurt you. They're good for you. They show you're alive, you're living, there's things growing inside of you, things are happening. You know what I'm saying?
You're a dramatic actor. You come to New York, and obviously you have a very difficult time.
Well, I came in New York and I was working at a place called the Chelsea West Side Theater. I volunteered to be like a gopher there, just so I could see how it all worked. And that was very good for me. I saw casting, I saw people working, I saw the best people working. And I found the whole thing intimidating. When we would do casting, especially for young people who were around my age at the time, I was about 22, 23, there were thousands and thousands of people would show up.
Excuse me, but I read somewhere you did buy a book called How to Audition. So there must have been something in your mind about learning how to do it.
I tried. I wanted to do it all, but I never liked the feeling around the acting scene. I really wanted to do things because I found them fun and because I felt that there was a community between all of the people who were doing it. Too many people I ran into were trying to figure out how they could become a star. And I think it's perfectly fine to want to be a star. I want to be a star. But you also have to love what you do. And there wasn't enough love. There was too much nothing. Downtown in the art scene, people were loving what they were doing. They were artists. They were musicians, dancers. I started hanging around with this crew. And eventually I started touring with these very intense, frenetic monologue pieces that I was making that were sort of my idea of performance art.
You wrote it.
I would write them. I would sort of improv a guy until he would finally shape into a little personality. And then I would string them together like beads, and it would be like a little portrait gallery. I would, for an hour or so, I would show the audience these sort of snapshots of people. There was nothing funny in the show. The show was intense and, if anything, scary. The weird thing that happened, and this is how I got into comedy or humor, is that I got booked into a place in Minneapolis, and they said, Eric Bogosian, comedian. And it was a very big house for me at the time. It was 300 people. And the people all thought they'd come to see a comedian. And so I came out and I started doing one of my guys. My Italian guy is like, oh, every time I have fried calamari, I feel like I'm going to blow up. Oh, my God. And I was just doing a character, and people were waiting for the punchlines, and they started laughing. And I was completely confused by this. They laughed through the whole show. And then I thought, I like this because it gives me a break. I know when the audience is with me because I can tell when they laugh, I know they're on my side. It's better than applause. So I started figuing out how to mix the two together.
The character with what was obviously quote unquote a joke, or I mean, or a thing to really laugh at, rather than laughing at the character itself. Even did you start writing it this way too?
Well, I always try to look for the truth in the guy. The better I knew the guy, actually the better the laughs would be, because then people would say, yeah, I know somebody just like that. Oh, yeah, oh, jeez, my brother-in-law, it's him. It's scary.
I want to stop and go back to New York, because you once said that you called New York a museum of humanity. I remember reading that. When you look at a character, let's say there's a wino in an alley, what do you see?
I don't know if it's empathy or selfishness or being self-centered, but as I walk around the streets of New York and I see all kinds of horrible stuff, I always wonder, how would I get out of this? What would it be like to be that guy? In a way, I think, they say that the cavemen used to throw stones at pictures of buffaloes on the cave walls to get up their courage to go out and face the real buffalo. And for me, theater is a lot about dealing with my own fears and my own hopes in a small way, so then I can go out and deal with them in a big way. Not to make light of this, I mean, this isn't like just tea time conversation here, but one of the biggest questions that have ever entered my mind is whenever I become aware of what happened in World War II in Nazi Germany to the Jews, I just think, what would I have done on either side of the fence there? Either being a German or a Jew. What would it have been like to have been there? And what would I have done if I were put under a circumstance where my life or death were hanging in that balance? And because that, to me, that's one of the largest events of the 20th century, shapes the way we look at things. What are we doing now? We're there now. We're there again. There's all these people with AIDS. What are we doing about them as they suffer? And so forth.
We'll be right back. Inside the comedy mind of Eric Bogosian.
All night long he lies there, and messages from outer space go into his brain. Buy a new car. Work harder. Your dog has bad breath. Use deodorant. Buy a microwave oven. Right? I mean, what's a microwave oven, man? Everybody's got one. Nobody knows what they do. They don't cook foods. Nobody knows how they work. But everyone has one, right? Why? Why does everybody have a microwave oven? Because the TV set told them to buy it.
You had a stand-up comic. When I first saw it, I was a little crazy about it. Ricky, what was his name? Ricky Paul.
Ricky Paul, yes.
Tell me about this Ricky Paul, the comedian.
Well, Ricky came from the fact that I had been working in a very precious downtown scene that happened in lofts, the kind of thing that everybody makes fun of when they talk about performance art. And a number of my friends, this was around 1979, were jumping into nightclubs like the Mud Club, were these very fierce places. And I wanted something to be able to go in there. I didn't want just... And what could I do? So I made up this guy, Ricky Paul, who was this violent, misanthropic, misogynistic, homophobic, racist jerk. And I would get up, and I would basically, my approach would be, how many people can I insult in a night? And I would get out on stage. I didn't even worry about being funny or not, but by doing this kind of rat-a-tat delivery, people would laugh. And I would just stick it to them, and... the point was it was like, this was performance art, so to speak, but the point was to get people so riled up that they would actually look at how they really think about this stuff themselves. That was the high-minded side of it. The low-minded was get them so riled up, they'd throw things at the stage, which they usually did. People would get up on the stage and try and get me off the stage, because I would say things like, blacks are lazy, or... I'd make fun of homosexuals. I would usually make fun of whatever the group was I thought was in the audience that night. I went into Berlin, and I went around on the stage in Berlin, and I goose-stepped and I sig-heiled the audience. And I said, and it was punks, shaved head punks, standing out there. And I said, isn't it getting kind of late for you kids? Shouldn't you be home in bed? It's, 11 o'clock. And who built this theater anyway? It's supposed to have been built with American money, right? This is, and they went frenzied. And it was great, and they were trying to grab my leg and drag me off, and the bottles are flying past my head. But I wanted energy. I wanted something happening on stage that was was real. Things happen in the theater and in clubs and so forth that it's sort of like we all, there's nothing real going on.
You said you can't be a comedian and say that my work is just a put-on. Let's discuss that. What do you think the obligation of comedian, actor, doing what you do, performance artist, about where the truth, where the real you and the stage persona or what you're talking about, how that comes together or does it?
I'm actually starting from a dramatic point of view, and I'm putting a show together and I'm putting humor into the show. So for me, the bottom line is always, did the piece touch us? Did the piece move us? Did we get pulled into the character the way that...
You're talking about the audience.
The audience, right.
Don't you record a lot of your characters on tape and then listen to them? And
oh, yeah, I have to do that many times. I improvise. There's some kind of truth I get to when I leave the tape recorder going, get into my studio, and just start to roll. Usually the first 5 minutes I have to throw away. And then at some point, I kind of lock into being the guy. I'm
this
like
is alone
deep
in a room?
Yeah,
alone in a room.
Just completely
going back to your childhood.
Yeah,
in a sense, to the mirror.
Right, right. Just becoming. And then I let the guy talk. And the guy will talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to it, and usually there'll be something that'll be like, oh, yeah, the way that was said, that's just... Well, it's
just
perfect.
Improv now.
And I would never be able to write it that well, because there's something about getting into the mind of the guy. There are times when I'm on stage, I swear there's a person there, and it's not me, and I'm like spending time on stage with this other guy.
You said somewhere along the way, you said that this character comes and visits you on stage.
Yeah.
You remember saying that?
Yes. I've felt it enough times. There was one guy I used to play who was a ceramic tile salesman. Ceramic tile salesman. I'm the best ceramic tile salesman in the entire U.S. of A. Who knows what ceramic tile is, but anyways, he sells it. And he goes to conventions, and he's always on the road, and he's always alone. And he's doing this monologue to this hooker that he's got up in the room with him. And he wants to talk with her. He wants to make conversation because he's lonely. At any rate, that was something that was deep in me that I had never even I never talked to myself about it. And it came out through this ceramic tile salesman. And when he's up there and he's on stage telling his story about this loneliness and talking to this girl, I don't know, it's like he's really there. And I guess it's me, but I mean, I'm the last thing. I'm the farthest thing from this salesman, who, by the way, I had met a guy who was I shared a cab out to an airport one time. Who was a ceramic tile salesman. That's when it started.
We'll be right back with my special guest, Eric Bogosian.
Are you high right now, Ken?
Am I high?
Are you on drugs, or is this your naturally moronic self? Watch the droolie getting it all over the console.
I can't believe I'm here, man. Hey, does this thing really work?
You're sitting in a radio station, Kent. You're sitting in front of a live mic. When you speak, thousands of people hear your voice. It penetrates their minds.
Okay, no, listen, I want to send that one out to Diamond Dave and Billy the bass player and all the babes at the Valley View Mall.
I'd like to talk to you about talk radio.
Yeah.
Tell me about this character, Champlain. Tell me what went inside your head and in your gut playing this character.
I went on that stage with the idea that I would play a guy who was so obnoxious that the audience would have to identify with people they couldn't see, all the callers. They would naturally they would think, oh, I'm like the caller. I'm not like this jerk. And they instead decided to like Barry.
Barry Champlain.
Barry Champlain. Barry Champlain, who basically, the way he made his living was putting people down, hanging up on people, abusing people.
There are a few of them with radio time right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, Howard Stern always says that, has said that it was based on him. It wasn't, unfortunately. I think Howard Stern can be very funny. there's always somebody who's going to come along and learn that they can rally the faceless audience against, they will target the people that they trick into coming onto their show and hammer them. I guess Stern does that still to this day with some of his
But there
guests.
was so much, but there was a great deal of humor in talk radio.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to be funny. I enjoy it, and in talk radio we tried to make it, in the play particularly, there was a lot of humor because we knew that it's very confrontational with the audience. The audience needs the humor for the release.
You said that if you don't take risks, you don't grow. What are the risks you intend to take?
Well, maybe we can change grow to learn, so that there's lots of things, new things I can learn on the stage. On stage, I want to put together shows, and I'm still doing solo shows, where I come out and I rock. I mean, it's such a cliche, but the thing is there is an energy, and there's an idealism, and there's an intensity to what goes on in the best of the bands that are out there today. It happens to be where my love is. I'm crude to the core. I can't do anything about it. I love metal. I love rude sex and things about sex. And I like raw, straightforward stuff. I know where my guts are moving. I like loud music, whether it's Jane's Addiction or Sonic Youth or Metallica. I know you love all these bands. They are intensely
Glenn Miller was the
about...
Glenn Miller was the last album I bought.
I want to get into that intensity. I want to be able to look the audience in the eye and say, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going down in our lives right now.
You want to kick some ass is what you want to do.
And there's always, and at the same time, I've learned how to be funny. So I want to be funny while I'm doing that. I want to do it all. I want to be able to walk out on that stage, grab a mic, and blow everybody away. I want to use that thing like a machine gun. At the same time, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to come out there and talk about urine-colored people or anything along those lines, which is a quote from Dice Clay. I don't like that stuff. I don't like hate. I want love behind it. So on stage, I'll do that. I've been writing a play. I'm going to put that up sometime next year. And these days, every play seems to move off and become a film later. Maybe that'll happen.
Well, I hope you don't lose your edge. I hope if it's on stage that I can sit there and feel the audience wiggling around me. I like that. I've always appreciated that in you and your work. And of course, you know, in the dark, when you become a director and a writer, now you're in the dark. Maybe you'll get a chance to even hit them a little harder. Do it. It's great. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for having you.
Thank you for watching Inside the Comedy Mind with my very special guest, Eric Bogosian.
I mean, I was on a bus the other day, and there was this tremendously fat person on the bus. I mean, humongous, taking up 3 seats. And there was another fat person on the bus taking up only 2 seats. And I noticed that the other person was kind of happy that there was somebody even bigger than they were. And I thought, now how can I get that in there somewhere? And eventually I found a way to get that in there.